my name is Gina Allen, and I'm going to do a summary on Chapter 5 from Learning from a Stranger. Jesus called for genuine love of those who are culturally different, not for us to be enthusiastic for the exotic or acting patronizingly pity. We need to have a balance there. We need to learn from those of other cultures, not just about them. And yes, my faith is at risk because I may actually learn something new. So the fastest growth rate in the Christian church is found in Africa, Latin America, and Asia. The typical contemporary Christian is a woman living in a village in Nigeria or Brazil. And we have to remember that Christianity originally was a Middle Eastern religion. The West does not own it. So there are ways to travel that we really never get outside of the bubble. Smith talked about engagement with people of other cultures can commonly remain minimal, especially in places like airports, even missions trips. He gave an example of visiting the cathedral. He also talked about we want to be careful about trusting technology. He gave an example of the email exchanges between the students where one group was shown as direct and seen as rude, while the other was seen as passive or shallow or boring. He also mentioned being careful about relying on English. Cultural meanings are not always shared. The French and North Americans at dinner, the French were seen as rude for interrupting, while the North Americans were seen as bored and slow conversationalists. He also mentioned that in a previous chapter that jokes don't work because precise communication is reduced with cultural differences. And English doesn't work everywhere. While many people speak English, still 3/4 of the world population does not. That's 4.5 billion people that do not speak English. Some places English has a bad connotation because English had been forced on the people. However, English can be a bridge. It's not, as long as we use it, not what I can get away with without learning another person's language, but what best honors those that I'm engaged with. Often we don't want to learn about another culture. We think, well, let's leave it to the specialists. He talked about in business with the example of the British and Chinese business meeting where there were different cultures and protocols. In housing, settlements, often it's harmful because they have different cultures. Healthcare, the example of the Korean woman who was forced treatment and her daughter was shocked that the wishes of an elderly woman was ignored. In education, he gave an example of the Korean student who didn't participate in talking out loud and actually lost points. I agree with the author. As a guidance counselor, I often would have new Asian families come in, and it would usually be the parents who talked, and I would ask the students questions, and he or she would answer only after the parents kind of gave permission for them to talk. Also, there was a whole time of groups of girls from Afghanistan came. They had no formal schooling. I knew that I would have to place them in classes that I hoped they would succeed in. I don't really disagree with the author, but he didn't mention, in my experience, that often people want to practice their English. That's how one family of missionaries who I stayed with in China, that's how they witnessed. They would go to what they called English corners, and they would practice English. He would take his Bible with him so that people could practice their English. So Smith talks about appreciating and learning from other cultures. Pohl believed that we should be grateful because it helps us see the goodness and activity of God as well as the character and action of others as well as our own. Leviticus 19:34 says, "You shall treat the stranger who sojourns with you as the native among you, and you shall love him as yourself, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God." Thank you.